Welcome to another episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon. Joining me this week, an on-demand guest, Tom Werman. We had Tom on recently talking about Cheap Trick, Motley Crüe, and all the other albums he's produced, which, as I mentioned before, were the soundtrack to my life. And so folks emailed me, they Twittered me, they Facebooked me, and they said, you gotta do a part two. So I got Tom back on the line. In this episode, we talk about Poison, Ted Nugent, some more Motley Crue, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So listen for that. I also like to mention that I will have a pair of tickets to give away to Black Sabbath in Montreal. The band is at the Bell Center on February 23rd, 2016, with Rival Sons opening up. Details on how to win. Well, listen for the end of this podcast. There's going to be some hints and stuff, and then details further on down the line. Always exciting to see Black Sabbath. Just a quick note, though, it is only the tickets that are up for grabs. There is no accommodations, hotels and stuff. There's no transportation. So if you're in Montreal or you plan on being in Montreal on February 23rd, this contest is for you. And on that, let's get right back into Tom Werman talking about Poison, Ted Nugent producing his bed and breakfast, and all kinds of great stuff. Here he is, the one, the only, Tom Werman. We are speaking with producer Tom Werman for a second time. Tom, I had to have you back because we got a lot of great feedback. Everybody was saying they loved it, they loved the detail, they loved the minutia. We started talking a little bit about Dokken, so they wanted more Dokken, they wanted more Striper. They said, hey, you didn't talk about Poison, you didn't explore Ted Nugent enough. And then, of course, Jeff Scott Soto wrote in,
Yeah.
the great Jeff Scott Soto,
Great.
and said, hey, you didn't mention the Rockstar soundtrack that I was on that
Right.
Tom produced. So here we are. We're part two. Let's
Lots
start
to talk about.
right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, there's tons to talk about. We could be doing part 3, part 4, part 12.
Hey, let's do it. Let's do it.
So let's start right there with the Rockstar one. That was in 2001.
Yeah.
You know, situate me where you were in your career, because for me by then you were sort of retired, pre-retired, slowing
Yeah.
things down, right? I mean,
Right.
how did you get involved in that?
Oh, well, yeah, you're right. I was pretty far gone at that point in terms of new projects. I had already been looking around to do other things. I wanted to open a sandwich shop. I had taken a brief position as a head of A&R at what was it called? EMI Capital Entertainment Properties, which was an alternative marketing arm of EMI, and we put together, packages from the EMI and Capital label catalog, and that was fun for a while. But I was ready to open this sandwich shop actually, when I got a call from Bud Carr, who was a very, very, as you know, productive, busy music supervisor for films in L.A. And I had known Bud from the time when he managed Kansas, and they were on Epic. And I was at Epic too. So he called me, and being that the film was about metal in the 80s, I was a pretty good candidate for that. So he asked if I would produce the music for the film.
And it turned out great. I mean, I know here at the Montreal Bell Center during the hockey games, they still play the song "Get Up and Shout" or "Stand Up and Shout." And
Really?
Yeah, they do.
That's great.
So then tell me about how that worked, because there were two voices going on, right? There was Millie or Matijevic, from Steelheart, that was doing part of the songs.
Yeah, Mike Matijevic is how they pronounce it.
Right.
And he was the it's really a long memory ago, but I think he did the Steel Dragon guy.
Right.
the head of the group that was modeled after Judas Priest, whose leader, by the way, was Dominic West.
Mm-hmm.
Who's in The Affair and was in The Wire. Really nice guy. And then I think Scott Soto was the lead voice in the tribute band.
Right.
Is that right? I
don't even remember, but there was Steel Dragon and there was Blood Pollution in that
yeah,
movie.
Blood Pollution. He was Blood Pollution, and it was a really, really, really difficult project for me, because instead of kind of driving the truck, you were sitting there waiting for instructions from the set. We would go to the studio and we'd get a phone call from the guy who was there at the film, the kind of editor, music editor, the guy who was in charge of literally placing the music in the film. And he'd say, I need this song with a different first verse and a guitar break that's twice as long and a much earlier fade. And so we learned the song the night before, and here we are, having to get it over to the set by I don't know, that evening. It was really tough.
Yeah, it's a different ball game. It also reunited you with Jeff Pilson of Dokken, who was in that movie. But I want to get back on this sandwich shops thing, because now you have. Pardon me?
That's not. It's much more interesting to talk about Dokken.
Let me pose the question first. You're doing the Stonover Bed and Breakfast now. You were going to open this sandwich shop. It seems to me that when you were done producing, you just wanted to be done and get away from anything that was in the sort of music field. Is that about right? Okay.
Yeah, that is about right. But before, in the mid-'90s, I tried very hard to reinvent myself in the music business. I tried to get a kind of network going for unsigned bands in big cities. I was going to have a network of like scouts who would feed me the best unsigned bands, and I wanted to offer it to labels on a subscription basis. Like I would send them the best unsigned bands around the country every month on a CD. And then the guys who fed them to me would get a cut if
a finder's fee
were signed. So it didn't work. It didn't work for a number of reasons, but it was a good idea. And then I tried to sell myself to label presidents as the troubleshooter / wise old owl who could help teach young A&R guys how to make better records for less money, because it was getting very expensive and nobody knew how to make records in A&R staffs anymore. And I thought maybe I'd been around a lot, and if somebody was having trouble getting a vocal and just couldn't deal with this guy or didn't know how to do that, I could just go in and troubleshoot. And they didn't like it. In short, they said, "We love you, Tom, but we don't need that." And they were wrong.
Right.
Not to love me, but in that they didn't need that. They did. And half of them were out of business 2 years after that. But that's what led me, in short, to get out of the business. And it's kind of an American cliche to say, "Honey, let's get off the treadmill and move to the country and open a bed and breakfast."
Right.
So
and you've done a very successful one. I mean, as I mentioned before, I've stayed there. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous property. Let me just, and I mean that sincerely. My wife and my daughter at the time, we had a great. Well, she's still my daughter, but when she was younger, we had a great time. But let me ask you about this. In the '90s, at that time when you were trying to get this sort of scouting thing done. It was almost like baseball scouting. You'd suggest to the big guys which players to pick up in a sense, right?
Yes.
Um, by then though, the music industry had changed. Nirvana had come in, the
Yeah.
grunge had come in. So all those 80s bands had been sort of cast aside. Did you get a sense that you were being cast aside also because you were the 80s producer guy, or was it just
Absolutely,
okay?
with total certainty. Because I understood once I saw what was going on in Seattle, mainly. 'Cause I was up there. Who did I do this? The Super Soakers.
Right.
Was that the name? Yeah. Well, I went up there and made a record in Pearl Jam studio, and I got a really good sense of what was going on in the early '90s. And I said, I understand anybody who was associated so closely with bands like Motley Crue, who were an embarrassment in the '90s, in a way. Now they're classic and cool, but they were, you know, they were an object of scorn from many perspectives in the the,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
new wave. Anybody who was associated with that really couldn't work with those bands. If Soundgarden had worked with me, it would have ruined their street credibility. Really,
But
you
you could
know.
have handled the sound, though. I mean, you could have made a great Soundgarden album, couldn't you?
Well, I could have made a great. The only thing I really feel I would have ached to do since 1990, really, was the Foo Fighters.
Right.
They are just the most wonderful rock and roll band, and it's that's right up my alley. But obviously it's too late for that. But people say, what new music? I don't listen to new music anymore.
Right.
I just don't. I don't have an emotional need for it. But the Foo Fighters disc, the hard disc of the 2-disc set, In Your Honor, is the best rock and roll I've heard in 20 years. So.
You mentioned briefly in one of our past conversations that there are some bands that might be able to get you out of retirement. Is Foo Fighters one of them? If Dave Grohl phoned you and said, "Let's make a fun '80s, whatever, fun rock record," forget '80s, it's just a fun rock record. We want you. Would you consider it?
I would be out of the house and down the street
Right.
in a matter of seconds. I'd be really, really delighted just to meet the guy, because he is, it's strange to have not an idol, but to really respect, and be inspired by a role model who is a lot younger than you,
Yep.
Because usually you look up to people like Pete Townsend, you're inspired by that. But Dave Grohl, I mean, he's really something. He made some really funny videos.
Yeah.
Got a great sense of humor. He's got, it seems, limitless energy, and he's totally devoted to rock and roll. Totally. I mean, no one that I've ever heard of is so into rock and roll. It means more to him than it does to me, and that's saying something.
And I got to say, it would be the
I just think
perfect
it's great.
mix.
I would run to do that record, because I think I probably have enough common ground with them, because they're pretty analog, those guys.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but I think if you worked with Dokken again or Poison again or what, it might almost come off sounding forced or disingenuous, or they're trying to recapture a sound. But I think with the Foo Fighters, it would be very honest, very organic. I think it would actually be very fun. I think it would just be a fun record.
It would be incredible.
Yeah.
For me, but that's Fantasyland.
Yeah, of course.
The fact is that I actually would not work again with
Any
bands that I worked with. It just
right. And
I don't know.
don't take that as an insult. What I was saying, I don't think they would sound right. I think it would sound right with Foo Fighters, just because
Yeah.
there'd be like an energy on both sides. Like you would be excited to be with them, and they would be excited to be with like the great Tom Werman. I just think that would
Oh, I
be.
don't think so. I don't think so. I think that's a little too. I mean, Grohl. I know he's into Cheap Trick,
Yes, of course.
and but I don't know. Somehow I think it's way beyond that time.
Yeah,
I
but
think there's just too big an age difference there.
I still think it would be genius. I really do. You know, Dave's is
Well,
great. He does great stuff. So
put it together. Put it together for me, and then
yeah,
Well,
we'll try. We'll
be
try
my
to do
agent.
that. I should. Well, we'll hopefully he'll get to hear this. It'll be out there shortly. But let's get back to Jeff Pilson and
Well, yeah.
Dokken, if you don't
All right.
mind.
No, I don't. I just wanted to say that I actually, for the first and only time in the last 16 years, I did go into a studio, a home studio, this year because a guy sent me a novelty song called Chocolate Cake, and it was brilliant. It was about food, and you can find it on somewhere. It's probably on iTunes. It's a very funny kind of heavy metal throwback novelty record. Anyway,
I'll find it
was,
and I'll mention it in the show notes that where people can find it.
yeah.
Um,
It, so go ahead.
I was gonna go ahead with Jeff Pilson. Now, Jeff,
Yeah.
I'll be upfront. I know Jeff. We email each other. He is absolutely fantastic. Has been very nice to my wife. Been very nice to my kids. Whenever Foreigner comes to town, he always takes care of everything. I love Jeff. He's
Is he playing
wonderful.
with Foreigner?
He is playing with Foreigner. Yes, he's been with them for easily 10 years.
Come on.
Yeah.
He wasn't when I worked with him last. That's amazing. Who else is in Foreigner now? Is Mick Jones in Foreigner?
Mick Jones is in Foreigner, and Kelly Hansen, who was in Hurricane, is their singer. And
Right.
the band sounds great. And Jeff has been, writing and producing and doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, he's a talented guy. He's a great guy. The reason I got him, the reason I wanted him in that band that we were putting together for Rockstar is because I had Zach Wilde and Jason Bonham in that band, and I was simply not up to dealing with those guys. I knew that there would be they're both wonderful and really talented, but I knew there would be times when there would be a control issue, and so I wanted Jeff in there because he's a great team player and he's level-headed and he's a good negotiator and a good mediator.
And he's a workhorse. The guy works.
And he's a right. He is a
nonstop.
workhorse.
Yep.
He's great. He's always been good. So I reached back because I hadn't seen him or talked to him since when was Dokken? Like 1980, 81?
Well, they're as far back, but Tooth and Nail that you worked on was 84.
Okay.
So
Yeah, well, that's the last time I saw Jeff, and it was 15 years.
right until the Rockstar. But let's look at Tooth and Nail. First of all, you have Roy Thomas Baker as an associate producer. Here's a guy who's done Queen. He did a Cheap Trick album. He's done a whole bunch of stuff.
Well,
what is associate producer? Was he involved a lot? Did he sort of?
No. Here's the deal.
Okay.
These things can be very misleading. I love Roy. I respect Roy. He's great. But the deal was that I did not get along with George Lynch, and he had it. We had a very divisive engineer. I won't go into it, but he set us against one another in very, very devious ways. He was a real bad guy, and I didn't know his motives. But in short, George lost his patience, and I lost my patience with George. So I walked, and I called Cliff Bernstein, who was managing them, and I said, "Listen, I don't want to I'll finish this record, I'll finish recording, but I want somebody else to mix it. I'm off, and I took a reduction in points and whatever. So Michael Wagner stepped in, and he mixed the record. And the fact, I think, just his presence there is the only reason that that Roy's name is on the record, because he was Roy's engineer.
Gotcha.
So that's the deal. And maybe Roy came in and consulted. Maybe he did a little executive producing. I didn't know that, so it was a surprise to me when his name showed up. But I do have the greatest respect for him as a producer and as a zany human being. He's wacky.
Yeah, he's a colorful character, I think is the best way to describe it. But Tooth and Nail is, and maybe Dokken fans will correct me, but by far their most successful and one of their most revered albums. What was that like? Now, I also know Don. I talk to Don every so often. We email and stuff.
Yeah.
Have
you
they?
know a lot of people.
I do. I know. Whatchamacallit? Alan Niven refers to me as Spider because I have spider webs going out to everywhere. Is it, were they a team in the studio at that time? Because there's all these rumors that they were never really a band. They always hated each other. They were always against each other. Again, Jeff Pilson was the guy that sort of brought everybody together, sort of the peacemaker. Yeah. Was it really that dysfunctional?
That's what it was like. George and Don were not the best of friends.
Right.
In fact, it was sometimes it just appeared that it was Don against everyone else. But he was the writer, and he liked. I feel that it seems he went more for the romantic song or the ballad, and the other guys, were more. They wanted to rock, and I don't know exactly what caused the division, but it was there, and it was there most of the time. But we worked through it pretty much. One of the reasons that George, I don't know, I don't understand what happened, but when he was doing some kind of solo, some kind of guitar break on another song, and he had already done Tooth and Nail, the song. And I said, George, you're a great technician. You're playing, as fast as anyone I've ever seen, but we're not really going anywhere. I really like to hear a solo that starts at point A and ends at point B, just like the one you did on Tooth and Nail. And he just lost his shit. And and I said, I was kind of, whoa, did I say something wrong here? Is that, it's like a criticism or something. So that's when I decided to abandon the project. But yeah, he was a tough one.
Right.
Don was, they didn't like each other, but Don was very agreeable. George was kind of prickly.
Are you surprised that Dokken didn't get to be bigger than they were? And they had a nice following. It was a great album. But in terms of, at least from the Canadian perspective, they were not an arena act. They were not a headlining act. And I think that was probably true around the world in terms of big venues. Should they not have been sort of the next Bon Jovi or next Def Leppard?
They certainly had the capability. They certainly had the talent. I can't really say. I don't know if Don was the firecracker kind of front man. He was more of a, not a. He wasn't exactly a crooner, but he wasn't a hard rocking guy. He wasn't Bon Scott. He wasn't Vince Neil. It just that's what I think. I also think that I don't understand how George avoided superstardom. because he's just a
Well,
superb guitar player.
right. Well, that's what you said on the last time, that he was the best guitarist you ever
Yeah,
worked with. So,
most likely, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And he definitely is a great talent. I want to, since you mentioned Vince Neil, I want to take us to Theater of Pain, the Motley Crue album. It is, for
Mm-hmm.
me, I mean, Shout at the Devil to me was the best Motley Crue album ever made. And my memory is very, very clear. I was at college at the time, and I took a tennis class that required me to drive a good 10 kilometers back and forth. And every time I went to that class, that tennis class for college, I would listen to the Shout at the Devil tape back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Side A to drive down, side B to drive home, side A to drive down. I mean, every day. It is
Great.
spotless. I mean, it's a perfect song, I guess, except the second to last song, which is where you hit all the duds,
What was it?
right?
What was it?
What was the second to last song? You know what? Hold on, I have a copy right next to me. Let me tell you what the second to last song was. On this one, it was 10 Seconds to Love, which
Okay,
I think it's a great
that's
song.
well, are there any ones that are worse? If you look at the track
Uh,
list, I don't think
no,
so.
I don't know. Shout at the Devil is better. Looks That Kill.
Oh yeah,
Helter Skelter, Red Hot. Geez, I mean that's a greatest hits right there. Too Young
yeah.
to Danger.
Too young,
Yeah,
yeah. Too young to fall in love.
Knocking Dead.
Looks
Yeah.
That Kill. Looks That Kill was nobody's ever mentioned that it's James Bond. It's the James Bond theme. And I tried to make it as close as possible.
Really,
Nobody
Looks
ever
That Kill is a
mentioned
James Bond theme.
yeah. Da 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 da.
Yeah,
It's
you're very, very right.
yeah.
Oh, I'm
So
gonna have to go.
uh,
I'm gonna have to go explore that, and you're giving me a laundry list of stuff to do. I got to go to all the albums and look at the before last cuts, which is gonna
yeah.
be time consuming, and then I've got to go check this for. Oh, I never knew it, but yeah, you're right. It really is.
Yeah, it is. If you hear, there are lots of little references to it.
The
But
musical motif or
I
whatever they
never
call it.
talked to Nikki about it. I just felt it and recognized it, and every time I see a James Bond film, I think about Looks That Kill.
Oh, there you go. All right, so we'll get to that. All right, but Theater of Pain.
Yep.
This was right after the infamous Vince Neil car accident
Yeah.
that caused you know the loss of life of Razzle from Hanoi Rocks and stuff.
Yeah.
There was a lot of Vince there was jail time and there was this, and then according to the management paid this and pay. How much of a mess was it going? I mean, if that's fair to say, I'm assuming. But how
Yeah.
much of a mess was it going into that record? Did you even think Vince was going to be on it? Was there a chance or a time where the management and stuff came and said, "We got to find somebody"? I mean, how?
No,
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 okay,
no. I wasn't privy to all the dealings, legal or otherwise, behind the scenes, but it was the most drugged out period of their careers, maybe their lives. I know that Nikki and Tommy were deep into things that I had no experience with, beyond party drugs. So it was tough. And it was also tough because, bands that hit it really big, like they did with Shout, have a lot of pressure to get back on the road. So you have to make the album very quickly, like we did with Cheap Trick was the Dream Police album, which was done in 30 days, start to finish. We had to do Theater of Pain quickly, and the biggest problem is that the artist has to come up. He might spend 5 years writing the songs for his first album or their first album. But once that album hits, they say, the record company says, okay, we need another album right now because you're going to tour. We need to support the tour with the album. And so the guy has to write 10 new songs, in a few months. And it usually doesn't live up to what came before it. So that plus the drugs and Vince it made for a tense kind of working situation.
Yep.
You may love that album.
No,
I, I
no.
no, I think it's the least favorite of the three for me. That's
Listen,
all.
as a fan, as a Motley Crue fan, I saw them 3 times this year. I love almost
Wow.
everything they do, but to me, this album is a mismatch of nonsense, and
Oh, okay, okay.
and I mean that respectfully. Shout at the Devil, one of the greatest albums of the '80s. Girls, 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 fantastic. Doctor Feelgood, I know you weren't involved with it. Brilliant album, but this, oh my God, what a bloody
Yeah,
mess! What a bloody mess.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, you may be overstating it a little bit,
well,
but
I'm talking
but
to
yeah,
my no
it is
offense.
good stuff. Smoking in the boys' room. Come on.
Well, yeah, but, so the cover song was good, and "Home Sweet Home," okay, it is a classic,
Yeah,
but
let's hear it. Come on.
yeah,
Major power ballad.
but
Major.
the before the last song, "Raise Your Hands to Rock."
Oh well, yes. That could have been in the turkey slot. Okay.
um, but how was that recording session? Was it just because the record company said we need something, and they came in and they were drained, they just didn't have anything, or was all this other stuff that was going around such a huge distraction that, or were they just so big that it didn't matter? They were so big that they could put out anything and people would buy it anyway.
Um, sorry, somebody just came in. Um, would you just repeat that question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I
no
was.
worries. I was just saying that album, was it just the band had nothing left in the tank and you worked with what, they came up with what they could?
No, they were they were pretty significantly distracted.
Right. Okay.
So there was they wouldn't focus, and also Tommy was dating Tawny Katane at the time, and that definitely disturbed his focus. So
That would disturb my focus as well, quite
yeah,
frankly.
there was just a lot of bad stuff going on. It wasn't quite as much fun as it normally is, because Motley Crue sessions were not grind them out, nose to the grindstone stuff. They were fun. There was a lot of laughing, and there was a lot of booze, of course, and the occasional drug, but we had fun making those albums. Theater wasn't as much fun. That's all.
Well, and again, no disrespect to the Motley guys. It didn't sound like a lot of fun to me. It's an okay album, I guess. But back at that time, there was also, or I don't know, maybe if you were aware, but there was a gentleman running around by the name of Matthew Tripe who said that he was Nikki Sixx and that he
Oh
was.
yeah, I remember that. Sure.
Remember him? Remember Matthew?
So strange, so weird.
Right. I mean, he obviously didn't replace Nikki on anything, right? I mean, it's fantasy.
It was completely insane. I'm just a nuisance, because people would ask me, to attest to this, or they'd call me and say, "Is there any, is this really Nikki?" And oh, come on. It's like the whole backward masking thing, or the parents' resource in PMRC, or anything like that. It was just stupid and transitory.
Yeah, it was sort of, so it was one of these nuisance things. One of these guys that had no other way to get rich, and I guess was looking for something. But anyway,
I guess, yeah.
Poison. Poison,
Poison.
poison, poison. Open Up and Say Ah. It's got some of their greatest songs on there. Every Rose Has Its Thorn, of course, which is ubiquitous these days. Fallen Angel, Your Mama Don't Dance, the cover song. Nothing But a Good Time. Perhaps their most recognizable song. Maybe that and Talk Dirty to Me are sort of neck and neck, but
well, Every Rose, I think, is the leader on that.
Yeah.
Clear leader. We had 4 top 10 singles on that. It was amazing, that record.
It really is, and in fact, some of my favorites on that one are not the singles. Back to the Rocking Horse, I think is and Look But You Can't Touch to me are fantastic. Now, Now, by the way, the before the last song on this one is "Your Mama Don't Dance," which ended up being a great video. So,
Well, yeah, but it was also the only cover song on there,
right.
right?
Yes.
So, I think the band probably wanted it there, and it was fine with me. Um, that was a pretty interesting record, and that was also fun. A lot of hard work, but fun to make. They're a very honest, honest group. We could have brought in, a couple of ringers at certain times, but we decided that we wouldn't do that. There was one guest, I think,
Yes, there was
Mickey
John.
Rappel, the harmonica player. I think he did a couple of things.
But you also had John Purdell, the keyboard and horn guy, on there.
Oh, he wasn't he didn't a horn guy. He keyboards, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, John was wonderful. John passed away at a very young age, and he worked with us in the studio. He worked with Dwayne Barron,
Right.
my engineer, and we were a great triumvirate. We had such a good time, and I've had some great engineers. But anyway,
Now you mentioned that you wanted to bring in some ringers.
well,
How
well,
come? With it? Because you said you don't like to use ghost musicians.
that's right. But Ricky, look, Ricky Rocket, he's the only musician that's ever turned to me and said, I know, I understand. I'm not a very good drummer, or I'm not the greatest drummer in the world. Maybe he said, but I try. And he did. He just stayed at it and at it and at it, and he had the greatest work attitude. And we pounded away, and we recorded it digitally. I knew that there would be a huge amount of punching in, and fixing this and fixing that. So I really wanted to do it digitally because it was, from a selfish perspective, it's so much easier
Than cutting tape. Right.
to do punch-ins. Well, then on digital than analog. It's just a very, very seamless kind of way to do. It's hard to explain. You had to be there.
Right.
But I don't know. It all came out very well, and the thing that I really that I remember best about that album was in rehearsal. I had brought my guitar. I brought down an acoustic Guild D55, a wonderful guitar I got in 1970, and Brett was sitting around playing it, and he said, "I wrote this song. I want you to hear this song," and he played Every Rose on that guitar, just acoustic, and I said, "Wow, that's a great, great song. We should really do that song." And I thought it was almost too country. I thought it was a really great country song. By the time I got through with it, of course, it was what I last time I think I mentioned, the kitchen sink approach to producing. Well, there was a lot of stuff on there that they probably didn't feel too great about, like the strings and the oohs and the ahs, the three-part
Right.
harmonies, and
Right.
and it was, it became quite a sweet song and quite a overproduced song in a way. But I couldn't help myself. You get a really good song like that with a great skeleton. You want to put a lot of fat on it, because it can hold it up. You got a strong structure, and you want to kind of decorate it a lot because it can withstand the weight.
Yeah. And of course, Brett has re-recorded it many times now as a country song, as a duet, as he keeps.
Yeah,
He
I'm
keeps.
not familiar with those, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, hey, Poison is one of those bands I think that shows that it's not about being technically proficient. It's about having that unknown commodity, what am I trying to say here? That chemistry of these guys, because they took away CC for a while and they went on tour with Richie Kotzen and they made an album and it sounded good. It was good music, but it wasn't Poison.
Right, right. Well,
Eh,
CC was a bundle. I mean, he was, he had his ups and downs. Um, he had a lot of problems with drugs in those days,
right.
and he would, we would do 30, 40 minutes on a guitar break, and then he'd run off to the bathroom, and he'd come back and he'd say, "No, sorry, let's start over again." And we had worked hard and accumulated some good stuff, and we had to just throw it all away because he was, he was, God knows what he was doing in the bathroom. I'm not sure which poison it was. Sorry, but
Exactly.
yeah, but
Was it a difficult
we
album
made
to
it through
make?
with him too. No ringers.
Okay.
It's all CC, and it was just hard work and a lot of punching.
Listen, it turned out great. Again, perhaps I'm wrong, but I was a fan. I think that might be their best album. The first one is pretty good, but this one,
Yeah, this is good. I
you know,
think it's too.
it's amazing that, at least for my life, the best albums of all these bands that I like are the ones that you touched. I mean,
Hey,
you know,
well, thanks. Yeah,
yep.
I have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, I don't see how you
But
couldn't.
I do, as I think we said last time. I do think that what is it? What was the one after Girls, Girls, Girls?
Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah, I do think that Dr. Feelgood is a really really good album, and with that Bob Rock did a really great job on, and that was I think the only one that I feel was in serious competition with
With what you did.
with the ones that I did. So
Yeah, and I'm sure Motley Crue fans will debate it, and I'll throw my hat in there. It's between for me. It's between Shout at the Devil and Doctor Feelgood, and for me, I think Shout at the Devil wins. Looks to
well,
Kill,
my
it's
two favorite
debatable.
songs from a production point of view
Right.
and from stuff that I enjoyed contributing are Girls, 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 and Wild Side, which are, as
Right.
predictably, the first two songs, you know, on side one.
Yeah, those are
Um,
those are great songs, but I just think that Shout is
yeah,
the ultimate to me. I think that's the ultimate Motley Crue record.
hey,
But we'll see.
hey,
Fans will listen to this, and we'll see who debates and see what happens.
it's all a matter of taste, and that's, taste is you cannot argue with that. You like it,
Yep.
like I hate cauliflower. My wife
Exactly.
loves it.
That's right. And
Taste.
girls, girls, girls is the cauliflower, and this. um,
Yeah.
here, speaking of people I spoke to,
Ruffles.
this week I got an email from Phil Lewis, and we had a little chat.
Oh,
And
Phil Lewis. Wow.
great name, great guy.
Hmm.
Their best album, and I don't think this is up for debate, is Cocked and Loaded. And
Hmm.
guess who produced it?
Well, yeah. Guess who came up with the name?
There you
Uh,
go.
yeah, the fabulous double entendre of Cocked and Loaded. I don't know if anybody ever got that. It, you
And
know.
of course you've got Robin Zander and Rick Nilsson who appeared on it. They did some backing vocals.
Hmm. I forgot that too.
So
Isn't
they,
it great getting old? I'm telling you.
I know that's what I'm here for, to remind you. So
Yeah, I guess so. But my mind. The good part about getting old is that you unclutter your mind with all these unnecessary details. I can't remember very much about their involvement in that.
well,
But
they're in there
um,
somewhere. It's
yeah,
certainly what the liner notes and all that say. But here's a band, L.A. Guns, that had it. I mean, Tracy Guns is a talented,
oh yeah,
talented guitarist. Steve
oh
Riley
yeah,
does a great job on drums. Phil
love
has a
Riley.
distinct voice. Because that's what you want in a rock band. You don't want these dime a dozen singers. You want a distinct voice. Vince has a distinct voice. Stephen Pearcy
Yeah,
has a.
yeah. Well, yeah, we that was when I gave. I think that we split up the album, and I took 5 songs, and Dwayne and John Purdell took 5 songs, and I think they're down as co-producers.
Yes, they are Dwayne and John, and those guys also appear on other albums that you were involved with. I think
Yeah,
the
Kicks.
Kicks, Blow My Fuse, and did they not do Tangled in Rains by Steelheart as well?
Yeah, well,
Perhaps.
possibly,
I'll
yes,
check that in a
possibly, yeah.
second.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so again, maybe an unfair question, but what is it about L.A. Guns that they didn't get to that next level? I mean, the album is brilliant. You know, you look
Right.
at 17 Crash, Rip and Tear,
I do like Rip and Tear.
Rip and Tear's
Yeah,
Ballad of Jane, of course, the big song for them.
yeah.
Um, any sort of memories about producing that one and why it just didn't
Yeah,
get to that? Was it because it's 1989 and the tides were turning? Was it?
yeah, that as well. I don't know. I really wasn't terribly enamored of a lot of this stuff on the album, and I don't think I was really, you know, deeply enmeshed in the making of that album. Um, I just remember being, having a little discomfort, a little dissatisfaction, and that's what really, led to our dividing up the album between Dwayne and John and me.
Okay.
So, I remember very little. Uh, I wasn't getting inebriated every night, so that I lost my memory. I just don't recall any really great times doing that record. Maybe I was just burning out at that point.
Perhaps
Um,
late
you know,
80s.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So some of it may have been me.
Okay, fair enough.
The fact that maybe I didn't give it 100%. I just I love Riley and I like Tracy.
Okay,
I can't remember too much about
Phil.
the sessions or the rest of the band really.
Okay. Now, you're remembered a lot of times for being the Motley Crue producer or the Cheap Trick producer, but you also did a lot of Ted Nugent. And
Yeah,
at least in
5.
my conversations, when we say Tom Werman, the word he's the Ted Nugent producer, that doesn't come up as they go,
Oh, really?
he's the Cheap Trick guy, or he's the that listen, my friends like Motley Crue and Cheap Trick, I guess more.
Yeah.
Um, what was it like working with Ted?
Hey,
He's a little bit like Jeff Pilson in the sense that he's a workhorse. I mean, he is, he's
well, yeah.
was he a workhorse back then? Was
He
he?
he is he's just a collection of superlatives. Ted, very hard to disassociate his politics from him. And when I say,
Even
people come
back
into
then?
the office here and they see 5 Ted Nugent platinum albums on, or I have albums in frames here, all around you saw it,
I did.
the office, and they say, "Wow, Ted Nugent," and I have to say, listen, we had no politics in common at all, because he's off the chart now. And we didn't discuss politics in those days. I always knew he was a conservative, but not to this extent. He's really out there. But I have to say that Ted is a wonderful guy. He's got loads of integrity. He is a complete straight shooter, no pun, and he works hard. He had every part of every. He had the bass part, the drums. And the vocals and the lyrics and everything in his head when he walked in there. The first album was really just quality control for me. We worked kind of together, and I made sure that, he dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and that it sounded good. Later on, I got more involved, but we always understood each other and enjoyed working together. And right from the start, I saw that we could make hit records.
Was
Uh,
he a little harder to market in the sense that, in the 70s at that time, Kiss had the big makeup and there was disco and there was all kinds of, flash, and then you got to the Motley Crue stuff and there was all flash. He was just sort of meat and potatoes. Okay, he had the loincloth and stuff, but he wasn't as
no,
photogenic or as wild
well,
and
see, I
crazy.
disagree.
Okay.
I disagree. He was a real magnet. I mean, he walked into a room and he was in control. He was the most important guy in the room as soon as he, crossed the threshold.
Right.
He had big charisma, and he certainly worked hard on stage. My God, I mean, he was a crazed individual on stage, whether he was playing or running around or sliding across or shooting arrows, and he was a really good showman. And yeah, some of his music wasn't well. What did you say? Meat and potatoes.
Yep.
I guess a lot of it was, but he attracted so many people. He had a force that was compelling, and
Okay.
and this what put him across. I think I really enjoyed him. I went out to his place. In Michigan, and we hung out there. We shot guns there. He sent my family bear steaks for Christmas every year. I mean, it was great. We had a long. I still email with him a few times a year.
Oh, well, there you go. I haven't interviewed him in 2 years, so you can certainly send him an email and say Mitch is ready again. But Cat
Yeah.
Scratch Fever is, first of all, great song, great album. I don't know if people want to say it's his best. That's up for debate. But what was it like working on that one? And
Huh.
any memories of being in the studio on that album? And of course, you've got Derek St. Holmes on that, who's currently on tour with Brad Whitford, doing the Whitford St. Holmes thing again.
Oh yeah. Man,
Um,
these people are all still on the road. It's amazing.
they have
Um,
not stopped. I'm
I
telling you,
love
you got to
Derek.
get back. You got to get back in the game.
Yeah, that's okay.
All your
I
guys
love
are still in the
I love
game.
flipping omelets here. I mean,
Okay.
this is a wonderful life up here.
I agree.
Wonderful.
It's a wonderful property. But what do we
Derek,
remember about Cat Scratch Fever? I mean, this is 1977, so
well,
I'm
I
asking you to
remember
dig.
I remember going to the show at the Omni in Atlanta and hearing him do Cat Scratch Fever live for the first time. And after the show, I called my boss, who was always willing to talk about rock and roll at any time, day or night. And I said, "Hey, Ted's written a single. We got a single." Because it was immediately obvious that was a very catchy lick he had there. And it was easy, you know. But all of Ted's albums were easy. We never ran into any roadblocks except for Derek, whom I love. I really enjoyed Derek. Um, I made some demos with him and tried to get him a solo deal, but nobody wanted to sign him. We came close, but nobody wanted to sign him.
Yeah.
And Derek got into some trouble in Atlanta. We made all our records in Atlanta, and we had to, I called Meatloaf. I called Meatloaf in to do some vocals, which he did. I'm sure you know,
Right.
on what was it? Free for All, I think.
Yes. Was it
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, that's another great. But I gotta say, every time we talk about songs you've made, it's always that's another great song. That's another great song. I sound like a broken record. Um,
That's
uh,
all right. Keep going.
Keep going, right? Well, okay. We did an hour last time. We're approaching an hour now, so I think that's a nice tight thing. So I'll end with this record,
Sure.
"Heaven Tonight." And I know that with Cheap
Hmm.
Trick, you can't talk too much. There's certain things, so let's try to keep it as
Yeah, but I can say an unlimited number of positive things.
exactly. And "Heaven Tonight" is very easy to say positive things about. I mean, an album that has "Surrender," "California Man," "Alvida
Yeah.
Zane."
Oh yeah.
It is hard to
Oh yeah.
criticize. But here's where I want to go with it. You did In Color, and as we know, it turns out years later that they thought that it needed more muscle. It was too pop. It um, was that brought into Heaven Tonight where they said, okay, we need to beef up the sound, we need to turn up the guitars, we need to make it sound more rock? And I know you said the record companies last time, they don't come in and interfere, but were they
No,
saying, hey, we needed to be a little more rock in terms of like we got Kiss out there, we've got Ted Nugent out there, we got Aerosmith
no.
out there, we got to beef it up a bit?
Honestly, I don't remember
Okay.
them saying anything like that. We just, the songs kind of lent themselves to it, and I guess I had seen the band a couple of times live, certainly between those two albums, and I said, this band is a much harder rock band than they were when I signed them.
Right.
They were a club band, and they were extraordinarily loud in the clubs. So much so that you couldn't really hear the songs that well unless you stood outside. But by the time we got to Heaven Tonight, it was easier to. The sound was better. The equipment was better. We could afford a little more time. So I think things sounded much better. I think you mentioned Auf Wiedersehen. It's
Isn't that great?
it was to me that was one of the first punk songs I ever heard. I think it could be if nobody had ever heard it before and it was played on the radio today, I think people would really like it and say, hey, who's that? And it's 30 years old, 40 years old.
It was almost sort of the precursor to thrash metal. It had a very, you just speed it up a little notch and you've got sort of a thrash,
Right.
anthraxy kind of thing, and of course that band covered it.
And it's about suicide. So
Yep.
so it's got the darkness.
Yep, absolutely. The album itself has always been, I guess, the myth or the legend or whatever you want to call it, is that this is the first one that Tom Peterson started recording with the 12-string electric bass. I'm assuming that's correct, and I'm assuming that the legend is it. As a producer, does that bring any kind of special, is it more difficult? Did you have to rethink how you recorded the bass? What is recording? No.
It was a treat.
Okay.
It was fantastic first he started with I think he had a 6-string bass.
Right.
And then he brings in these things and it's not, hey, look at this new toy I have. He really understood how to use it, how it could do things that regular basses couldn't do, and I'm going to do it. So I know I've been saying a lot of things like this is the best and this was the worst. He's a phenomenal bass player.
Terribly underrated. Terribly underrated.
Well, it's effortless and
Yep.
and in incredibly good taste what he plays. You know how McCartney's bass lines are not only perfectly executed, many of them are surprising, because if you listen to the song and you would suppose that he was going to play these notes, which are more predictable, he plays notes that are not at all predictable, and he goes, he makes bass lines that are just so interesting and just so Paul McCartney. And Peterson did the same thing. I think, he's very important to that band. He and Bunny were just about as tight as, Mick Fleetwood and John McVie. Yeah. They were a machine, and that's one of the reasons why the band they sound so good, because you've got this rhythm machine. And Tom played a 4-string, 6-string, 12-string. It was good. It was great.
It adds a lot of depth and a lot of flavor, if I can use that term, to the songs.
Sure.
I mean,
Yes.
you take whether it's Surrender or Wiedersehen or any of those, and you bring it down to a regular, for the lack of a better word, bass of 4 strings.
You're going to hear that 12-string bass, I think, in High Roller.
Yeah.
Really well. I mean, it starts the whole song. It's kind of like it sounds a little bit like Pinball Wizard, the opening of that.
Oh my lord! So now I got the James Bond theme, Pinball
Yeah.
Wizard, and I've got the
Hey,
before last.
that music has influences.
Of course,
Everybody's, all songs are derivative in some way of
of course.
things that went before them, and that's what makes it interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, we started off talking about the Foo Fighters. They take a lot of influence from what these guys were doing, and what you were doing. I'll finish on this since we're hitting that 1 hour mark. Production wise, what is your best album in terms of just pure production? Forget the songs, forget the band, just the one that you really said, "Yeah, I nailed it. I really got the production right on
Well,
this one."
there, it's hard, but I think Dream Police for me, or Heaven Tonight,
Right.
and um, an album by the Producers, a band that I loved and cherished and thought would be huge, and became a cult band instead.
Right.
I love the Producers' first album. I think that's I nailed that. Absolutely nailed that. And the other two, I guess, between Heaven Tonight and Dream Police.
And in terms of the complete package where the production was nailed, these are the best songs. This is, this album's going to live forever and ever. What is sort of the best overall with everything? The best songs, the best production, the best
Yeah,
performances. I mean, is that even I mean, I know it's not a fair question, but
it's not. It's
of
not.
course, of course not. But
but one of those
that's the
two.
fun in it. That's the whole fun about asking these questions,
Yeah.
is that you gotta.
I guess Heaven Tonight.
And are you just limiting yourself to Cheap Trick? 'Cause I mean, like between Poison and
No,
Motley Crue and Ted Nugent. Okay, so those,
no.
so you come back to either Dream Police or Heaven Tonight, and all right,
And the Producers.
and the
Yeah.
producers, yeah. And in terms of, I'm
Also,
not very familiar with the producers. In fact, I don't know anything about the
no,
producers.
you should listen to the
But
Producers' first album. Listen to Mother's finest second album called Another Mother Further. It
yeah,
has Mickey's Monkey on it. Those there are songs from that on the 2 CD set I gave you. They're two of my greatest misses.
yes.
So check those out. I think you'll like them.
And just in terms of a fan perspective, between Heaven Tonight and Dream Police, for me, honestly, I think I'd have to flip a coin. Or I think Monday it's Heaven Tonight. Tuesday I like Dream Police more. Wednesday I like Heaven Tonight. Those ones are they're neck and neck. I mean,
Well, Dream
they're
Police did suffer a little bit from the pressure. We had to finish it in a big hurry. We set up on day one. We turned it in on day 30. These days, that's not unusual. Then it was unbelievable
yeah,
because, it was
but
mixed and everything.
but it has one of my favorite Cheap Trick songs ever. It has Voices on there. I think Voices is one of the best things they've ever done.
Wow.
And
I think I'm playing guitar on that.
well, let me see if I can find out. Do I have any notes
But
on
not
that?
lead guitar. Please don't. I don't want to step on Rick's toes. I
I
think I was playing. No, I'm not credited. But
okay.
I think I was playing.
Well, I do see that Steve Lukather played guitar on Voices.
Yeah. Yeah. I did hire him. I think it probably pissed Rick off the way I hired,
Steve.
what's his name?
Was bringing in Steve Lukather just to add an extra layer of, an extra depth, or was it really you don't think Rick nailed it and that you needed to bring in a ringer? I mean, was he a
I
ringer
think
or just an extra depth, an extra flavor?
an extra flavor.
Okay.
Rick didn't play. Rick wrote a song there that didn't, actually fit with his style, and I didn't feel that. I felt that we could get a much more appropriate guitar solo out of a session guy, just like I did on the original, much maligned "I Want You to Want Me."
See, I don't find it maligned. I like that version. I mean, I do.
Well,
So
yeah, people just. I purposely made it a dance hall tune, like from the '30s, a cabaret thing, and people think, well, why? Gee, it's so weak next to the Budokan, but they don't get it. That's the way it was presented as a kind of a finger snapping, toe tapping dance hall song.
Yeah, well,
That's why it has a tack piano on it. You
yeah,
know.
well, it works for me. I mean, listen, the Budokan version and the rock version is the version, but that's a fun version. I have no problem. So just for my own edification, on voices, Steve Lukather only did the solo. He didn't do the whole track.
Oh, he did Phil's.
Oh, okay. So we do hear Rick on it.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I think we
Phew.
do. I
Uh-oh.
couldn't be absolutely sure.
Uh-oh.
I couldn't be sure. I'd have to listen to it again.
But listen, to
But
me, it's one
Rick
of their
did so.
greatest.
Rick was just unbelievable in terms of his output. He was also a workhorse. He never stopped.
Oh, the whole band is great, and the fact that they didn't get to that touring arena level or sustained touring, and they're still at it in 2015. They're still doing some crazy amount of shows, 100 or 120 or whatever it is they do per year. That band just never ends. And how not Rick, sorry, how Robin hasn't blown out his voice at this point is beyond me. I mean, the guy sings these songs and still sounds as if he was 25. It's.
Yeah, he is with the other superlatives. He is unquestionably the best singer I worked with.
So now we just need you to put a band together that has
Yeah,
Robin Zander, George Lynch. Uh,
yeah.
who's your bass player in that?
Bunny would be the drummer, or Tommy Lee.
Oh, that'd be
And the
good.
bass player would be probably, I don't know, probably Peterson. So let's just reorganize the young Cheap Trick
Yep.
and let bygones be bygones and go back into the studio.
So I guess so basically in terms of musicality, in terms of performance skill, Cheap Trick is the best band you've worked with.
Yep.
Yeah, well, listen, I would not disagree with that. They are stellar musicians.
Yep, they
And
should have been. You asked me why this band shouldn't have been bigger or that band shouldn't have been bigger. Cheap Trick, I was always amazed that they weren't 5 million sellers. They're so good, and you can see just by reading this or that site online that people are still incredibly passionate.
absolutely. I think that's
Speaking
what's
of,
great about Cheap Trick, though, is that they're somewhat quirky and they're somewhat the outsider. I think that's sort of what makes them cool, and that's what their attraction is that they're not this big
oh,
band that has faded over
at,
the years. They're always that little dark secret that you got to go
right.
back to because undeniable Dream Police, Way of the World, Gonna Raise Hell. I mean, and they've done it
Right,
all.
right.
They've done it
Yeah,
all.
listen to Gonna Raise Hell. My God, it's or Heaven Tonight, the song. They're works of art. They're opuses. It's
Yep.
quite amazing. One of them's like 9 minutes long.
Gonna
I
Raise
think.
Hell. And I have to tell you, my experience with Gonna Raise Hell when I first got around to it, I had the vinyl and stuff way back, but my biggest memory is that I had it on 8-track. Remember those, huh?
Yes,
And Gonna
for
Raise
a brief
Hell
minute.
was divided into two sections.
Oh,
So
really?
yes, on the 8-track you had like a 3-minute section of Gonna Raise Hell and then like a 6-minute section. So to me, when I got back into Cheap Trick and I got the CDs, I kept going, wow, this song is really long. I don't remember it being this
Yeah.
long. I
Oh, that's
remember,
amazing. I wouldn't have allowed that, but I didn't know.
yeah, they on the 8 tracks they had cut it into two separate segments, and so I sort of grew up or was remember it as being these two sort of separate songs, and then after that I got back to the CD and I
Well,
was like, oh hey, that's a really long song, but damn, it's
that,
pretty good.
that's one of the problems. That one of the things that kind of started the music business on a downward track was putting commerce before art. And
Yep.
there's a perfect example. Let's break this song up into two pieces because it doesn't fit. That's weird. Anyway,
Anyway, there you
um,
go. We've done an hour. I'm telling you, we still haven't hit Steelheart. We still haven't hit Kicks.
well, listen, if people want a part three, I'd love to do
There's
it.
there's 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 always more, and of course, Stonover is the bed and breakfast. It's just stonover.com if people want to check it out, right?
No, it's stonoverfarm.com, and it's the
Sorry.
only. It's important to mention, I think, that it is in fact the only luxury bed and breakfast, all suites, all conveniences, all
Yep.
toys that exists. There are lots of luxury inns and hotels, but it's the only luxury B&B that I know of.
And I will repeat it at infinitum or ad nauseum. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous
Yeah,
property, and it's in a
thank
gorgeous part of the country. It is. I
It's
mean, if you
heaven.
really just want to get away and not think about the city or what, that's the place.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
It's 95% of our guests are from Manhattan or Brooklyn,
Yep.
and
And
they just love to come up.
so it's stoneoverfarm.com.
Stonover, Stonover, farm. It's just stonoverfarm.com.
Yep.
That's the website.
And there you go. So hopefully folks will get away and enjoy that, and hope they'll enjoy part two. We got a lot of good stories, and there you go.
Yeah, we welcome all freaks up here.
Yes, and we will definitely. And I know Jeff Scott Soto mentioned that he would like to come visit, so hopefully he'll come and do that at some point too.
He's welcome. He's
Yes.
welcome, the tall man.
He's
Yeah.
a good guy, good singer, and it was interesting to see him in Journey for that brief moment where he was the singer
But
in
you've
Journey.
seen so many other. You've seen a lot of shows.
Yep.
I'm really impressed. You've been out there. I kind of stopped watching and listening quite a while ago. So
Yeah, you
I
see,
still
I
listen
haven't.
to stuff from 1950 to 1990 regularly, because there's so much I missed, and I keep going back and back and back, and I listen every time I go to the gym. But you know some subtleties and things
Yeah.
out there, details.
Well, I like the quirky stuff. As a record collector, I was always the one that was looking for that B side. The 7-inch that had an unreleased track on the other side, or a remix, and I still do that, and I still look for those
Yeah,
bonus tracks, and I still look for that little quirk. I look for that deluxe edition that was made in a limited run, and
you
yeah,
should be talking to my son Daniel.
yeah,
He's the same. He's an archivist,
yeah.
collector, music freak, encyclopedia.
I love that stuff, and I know that the stuff that we grew up on, that you were a part of, the Motleys and all, that was great. But these days, if you go to Europe and you listen to what's going on in Sweden, and in terms of the hard rock and the rock and stuff, Europe right now has got it. They just are doing it right, and
Hmm.
it's nice to see that there's a new vibrant scene. It's not Sunset Strip. It's like Malmo, Sweden, the big hot place now. Who knew? But they're really doing it right. Bands like Mustache, Heat, Backyard Babies, or a little more classic. It's just a lot of great stuff. So
Hmm.
music never ends for me. And there you
Good.
go. There you go. And I will end this on that note. Check out the Bed and Breakfast. Go check out all the before last songs and all these great albums. And check out Sweden, folks. It's a great country with great new music. Thank you, Tom. Always a pleasure. And hopefully this summer I will get down to the Bed and Breakfast. It's been a few years that we've been, and it's time.
Great. I'd love to see you again, and thanks a lot for the opportunity to mouth off.
Yeah,
It was a lot of fun.
absolutely. Thank you. And there you have it, folks. My second interview with Tom Werman, talking about Motley Crue, Poison, and all these great bands that we've loved for many, many years. On that, let me tell you about the Black Sabbath contest. The first thing you've got to do is head over to the one-on-one Mitch Lafon Facebook. There is no with in that, couldn't fit it into the title on Facebook, so it's facebook.com/one-on-one Mitch Lafon. The first thing you got to do is you got to like the page. That's the first thing. Listen to another episode, and I'll tell you exactly what to do. The drawing for the Black Sabbath tickets will take place at some point in the next couple of months, just before, or before the show takes place in February. So keep listening to the podcast, keep following the one-on-one page and for your shot to win. And of course, for those of you who plan on being in Montreal on February 23rd, this contest is for you. And now, take a listen to this.